Hi everyone, Al the Psych here. I have a video for you that I call the voice of a client. This is for informational purposes only. And so when I was working as a psychotherapist a long time ago, I worked mainly with teenagers. And I remember one particular teenager, and I'll change the circumstances, name, and all that. I'll call her Sandy. And she was having a difficult time talking to her parents. Sandy was in an inpatient setting at the time, and she was unable to look at her parents and talk to them in a therapeutic scenario or setting. Now, my therapist at the time had used a technique in which he acted as the voice of the client, and I decided to try to use the same technique. I don't know if there's an actual name for this or not, but I just call it, the voice. So what it involved was for me to talk to Sandy ahead of time and determine what she wanted to say, what her issues were, what she wanted to bring up, and of course she would also tell me what she didn't want to talk about. So I had to be careful to make sure that I didn't add anything to the items that she said were okay for me to bring up. And then in our family session, and I told the parents ahead of time, how things were going to go, just so they were prepared. And the parents were pretty cool about that. But what I did is I sat behind Sandy and acted as her voice. And Sandy sat pretty much with her back to the parents, so it was a little tricky just to make sure I didn't say things that were not on the list, in terms of confidentiality reasons, things like that. But Sandy and I had done our homework, and I think we were pretty much in sync. And sometimes if we hit an area that was maybe a little fuzzy as to whether or not it should be something that should be broached, I could look to her and, she'd give me a nod, if it was okay. And again, this is years ago. From what I remember, though, the session actually went pretty well, and topics that had been somewhat taboo were brought up. And then the next session, Sandy actually acted as her own voice. And if I remember correctly, she didn't actually face her parents, but kind of sat kind of to the side, with her side facing the parents. And that would eventually change to where she rotated and felt a little bit more comfortable facing her parents. And it helped that, maybe there was a little distance between them as well. Now, as a side note, I've worked with several teenagers that actually felt more comfortable talking with their backs or side of their body to their parents and not making eye contact, at least in the initial stages. And I found it actually to be pretty helpful to, just not make a big deal about it. And, it helped get subjects on the table that needed to be discussed. So I speculate that this body language might be something parents might want to consider tolerating in their child, as opposed to the, look at me when I talk to you mantra, okay? Because I think that can kind of shut things down. But, if you, as a parent, if you tolerate the, okay, yeah, I'm not going to look at you, as a child or a teenager, and yeah, maybe I'm going to turn away from you a little bit, but I think that's still going to help facilitate interaction and communication. So that's my take on that, and hopefully it was helpful.